Hi, this is Scott Garibay. Today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. We're going to talk about Dragonlance, Shadow of the Dragon Queen. We're in Chapter 4, Shadow of War. And now we're going to talk about when the player characters encounter Knight of Sarlamir, Order of the Crown, Xanis Sarlamir. Okay? And so basically we're in Calamon, and the player characters have come back to Calamon from the Lord Bacaris's debacle at Steel Springs, and essentially the player characters were helping the city, the soldiers of Calamon retreat, right? Because they had been led there by Lord Bacaris. So the player characters come back, and they encounter Knight of Sarlamir, Order of the Rose, Caradoc, right? Who's actually an undead seneschal of Lord Soth, and we get the introduction of Lord Soth, right? And the player characters are now informed that Lord Soth exists, and Lord Soth is this incredibly powerful, ancient, he goes back hundreds of years, ancient knight of Sarlamir, who has now dedicated himself to evil, right? And they fight Caradoc, they defeat Caradoc, and then they see this shattered door that leads downstairs below where the Council of Calamon meet. They kind of quest, and this is very dungeon-like, right? So one of the things that's interesting about Dungeons & Dragons is it increasingly is leaving the dungeon, right? Dungeons are, it's in the name, and dragons are in the name, but you don't really see a lot of dungeons in Dungeons & Dragons. It's actually pretty rare, right? But they're questing downward into this keep area in the city of Calamon, and they get to these catacombs, and they find an old gravestone, and at that old gravestone they encounter another undead knight of Sarlamir dedicated to evil, who is Knight of Sarlamir, Order of the Crown, okay, Xanis Sarlamir. And he is wreathed in purple flame, okay? And he comes out of his grave, and he makes this booming declaration with this supernatural voice that he is being called to Lord Soth in the north, right? And he will travel to Lord Soth, and he will reap as he goes, right? And so, the player characters are realizing that that the sins of the father are being visited upon them, right? So the Knights of Sarlamir are incredibly complicated. The actual Dragonlance, Shadow of the Dragon Queen encourages player characters to take these backgrounds, these knight backgrounds, right? Order of the Crown, Order of the Sword, Order of the Rose, right? And they get very clear, very powerful advantages from these backgrounds. These are not these, and also let's be clear, backgrounds now are carrying feats and real power, right? Background, and this all started with Amanda Heyman cracking the seal on this with her brilliant innovation in Dungeons & Dragons, which was really backgrounds that in some ways absolutely rival what you're getting. Actually, there's no question, backgrounds are more powerful than species now. No two ways about it, right? I'm running a Harengon. I really like Harengon. I love these animal races that, I really like playing, so I'm playing a Harengon. It's like half a page of stuff on Harengon, right? These backgrounds are frequently as powerful as species are in Dungeons & Dragons. It's really interesting, right? It's very interesting to be getting to this point where we have backgrounds that are nearly as powerful as what you would be dealing with that are nearly as powerful as what you would be dealing with species or with class. It's incredible, right? So the player characters are being encouraged to be these specific things within to take these back, to align themselves with the Knights of Sarlamir. But what is the history of the Knights of Sarlamir? Is this a group they can be proud to be a part of? It's really a fallen order, right? Is there any vestige of honor left in being a Knight of Sarlamir? It's kind of a big question, right? And one of the reasons why this is so confusing and so difficult to manage is one of the things we're dealing with here is we're really dealing with we're very much dealing with this issue of where do we run? Yeah, with porting decades of importance and decades of history, right? Which is what you're dealing with Dragonlance, from a crusty old, like, stuck in their nostalgia journey group of players and dungeon masters to modern engaged dungeon masters and players, right? And that can be challenging. It can be very challenging, right? So it is really interesting just to see where all this lands, right? And so the player characters now encounter another undead Knight of Solamnia. This one is different than the last in that the last one was Order of the Rose. This one is Order of the Crown, right? And this one has these purple wreath flames. So what is the purpose of Xanis Sarlamir in Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen? One, I think the biggest thing you're seeing here is F. Wesley Schneider wants you to understand that one other thing that Xanis Sarlamir says. So he says, I'm going to go to my master in the north, and I'm going to reap a path of murder all the way there, right? And in addition to that, there's one. I'm going to go where Lord Soth was dishonored, which is the City of Lost Names, right? And so really what you're seeing is this Lord Sarlamir, or actually Knight of Solamnia, Order of the Crown, Xanis Sarlamir, Undead Knight of Solamnia, is actually a quest giver, right? And he's saying, hey, your big boss is waiting, right? And Lord Soth is being announced, right? And he's being shaped, right? And he is being warned about, right? Like, oh, this guy's going to be very powerful. He's going to be very hard to defeat. He's going to have undead that are his thralls, right? And I'm going to put some hurt on you just to remind you that the real pain is coming when you meet Lord Soth, right? And so it's really interesting. Now, there's one other thing I wanted to say about Xanis Sarlamir. Not all D&D canon hardbacks are perfect, right? This is actually it's a bad writing step, right? You have Undead Knight Caradoc, Undead Knight Sarlamir, boom, boom. And they're one right after the other. This definitely could have been managed better, right? And so, I definitely, I'm a D&D champion, right? But I want to be, and people are like, oh, you're a shill, right? I felt really good the other day when Ginny D interviewed Kyle Brink, and she's like, you all say I'm a shill, right? And I'm like, people accuse Ginny D of being a shill, right? It's ridiculous, right? Ginny D is not a shill, right? And I'm not a shill. And one thing I'm starting to understand is, like, there's people who have identity accounts, right? Ginny D has an identity account. She says, I'm Ginny D, and you see her face, right? And if you walk up to her at a convention, you know exactly who she is, right? Same thing with me. I have an identity account. And one of the things I'm realizing is people with hide accounts, right? You look at their little cute account, and it has some whack name that's not their name, and it has a picture that's not them, right? And if you meet them at a convention, you don't know if you met them or not, right? Because and that's the issue. I say stuff on my identity account, right? And every day, schmucks roll up on these hide accounts and just spit nonsense, right? And the reason why is there's no consequence. And I think one of the things we want to get to is where there's no benefit, right? If you're on a hide account, your words don't matter, right? You can say whatever you want because you don't own those words, right? It's just a hide account. You're poking out from behind this little hide, like poking your head out like a turtle, right? And go, oh, I'm going to squawk my nonsense, and I'm going to poke back in because nobody... If you got something to say it on an identity account. And by the way, if you're on a hide account, get off. All your words don't matter, right? It's just, it's important, right? Like, and that's another thing. Like, it hurts when people say you're a shill, Scott. I'm not a shill. I've never received $1 from Wizards of the Coast. Like, it's absurd, right? But I'm starting to realize, there are cowards and there are the brave, right? If you got a hide account, you're a coward. Right? I'm brave. Ginny D's brave. Right? Get brave. Get an identity account. Nobody cares about your stupid nonsense you say under a hide account. Right? But so basically, we see Sarlamir, right? And so this is not managed well. Caradoc and then Sarlamir, it's not perfect, right? And so I just wanted to say this: D&D canon hardbacks are not perfect. They're just better than anything you're ever going to find on Pathfinder, OSE, DCC. right? They're just better than anything you're ever going to find in any OSR book ever. Every word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments, send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful one.